let's just talk about striker-fired handguns now. Again, go back. Striker-fired handgun is where the fire control system or the trigger system, the part that makes the gun go bang, is internal. There is no external hammer. So when you think about the old cowboy movies that you'd watch, your cowboy would be holding a gun and he'd pull the hammer back and he'd pull the trigger and you'd see the hammer go forward and make it go bang. Well, there are semi-automatic firearms where there's an external hammer and you actually see the hammer come back and move as the weapon operates. Striker-fired guns like Glock, like many other, like the Taurus Millennium Series guns. Now I think they're on the G2, maybe even the G3s, but the ones we were talking about were the first and second generations. They didn't call them that, but they were. All those components that made the gun go bang were internal to the gun. So if the trigger moved out of position when it was impacted, then the weapon you could have an unintended discharge or an inadvertent firing, and people could get hurt or killed. So why is it important for there to be some type of trigger safety on the gun? In my opinion, a trigger safety, if you think about a Glock, that's what everybody understands and has seen, a Glock safety on the trigger. Now, people think that Gaston Glock, the gentleman from Austria that engineered and manufactured Glocks, came up with trigger safety. That's not true. That didn't happen. That system, that patent, had been around for over 100 years. There was an American arms maker that patented a trigger safety for a revolver. It's the same kind of trigger safety. It was a hinged safety device. It was on the trigger itself, and the hinged part would rest against the body of the pistol until it was compressed by the finger on the trigger. Only then could you move the trigger to the rear. Okay? Glock he realized, hey, Glocks are striker-fired guns. This trigger does not need to move out of position unless someone is actually pulling it. So I'm going to put this hinged safety device on the trigger. And everybody thought, my goodness, there's no safety on the Glocks. It's not true. There is a trigger safety, and there are several internal safety devices. But if the trigger moves out of position, the internal safety devices can fail. That's why the trigger safety is so important, and so many manufacturers have gone to some type of trigger safety, whether it's a hinged trigger itself, whether it's the trigger safety or like the Glock, or other similar trigger safeties. Sig Sauer, who was a very big fan of Sig Sauer. The first P320s that they came out with did not have they had a problem with their internal trigger safety, and they recalled those guns and replaced the fire control, replaced the trigger safety in those P320s. As a result of the Taurus-Carter settlement, in my opinion, I believe Taurus went to and adopted the trigger safety, and the G2s and the G3s that they're selling now actually have a trigger safety on. So the defect that we said existed in the first generation and really second generation Taurus models, the Millennium Pros, they corrected that by, in the new weapons that they started manufacturing, actually have a trigger safety on. So we're very happy that hopefully that safety device has been added to those pistols, and maybe will save some lives. Because a firearm, like any product that's held in your hand, is going to be dropped at some point. If you don't believe me, go find a police officer that's been carrying a gun for 15 years and say, how many times have you dropped your handgun? And he's going, he's not going to want to admit it, but it happens. Just like you drop your cell phone, or your car keys, or the remote control, or a cordless drill, if you're working around the house. It's foreseeable that any handheld device can be dropped. Any handheld tool can be dropped. So from an engineering perspective, it should be engineered to survive the drop and not injure someone as a result of the drop. Okay, that's the position we take, is it is foreseeable that a hunter may trip in the woods. If a rifle, if a shotgun bumps the ground as he falls, it shouldn't fire unless the trigger's pulled. Someone is active in the shooting sports. If you're out at a range and you are drawing and moving with a handgun, if you drop that weapon, it should not fire unless somebody pulls the trigger. Those internal safety devices should prevent that from happening, and that's not an unreasonable expectation. It can happen. Manufacturers can make handguns that are safer, that can survive a reasonable drop, and they've been doing it for years. So do your research, read. Don't always, I'm not saying that there are some lower end from a price point weapons that aren't pretty darn good, but make sure you check out the safety devices on a firearm before you put ammunition in it, before you decide to carry it and keep it around other people. Hey, again, this is Todd. I'm so happy that you guys have watched the video. Thank you so much. I would love for you to like it, share the video. If anyone needs to see this, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have comments, please send them to me. Go to our website, www.mhhlaw.net. There's a link to my email address on there. My email address is twheeles, and I'll spell that twheeles@mhhlaw.net. Shoot me an email if you have a question. Again, I am an active handgunner. I carry a gun every day. I believe in our Second Amendment right. I also believe that manufacturers of firearms have an obligation and a duty to us, the consumer, to make it as safe as possible.